Hello friends, Jenkins here, bringing you another Dota 2 video on behalf of Dota Alchemy, and in this video I'm going to be covering 4 tricks to win any 1v1 in Dota. Trick number 1. If the enemy is a stronger last hitter than you, then beat the living shit out of them when they go for a last hit instead of trying to deny them. This is something that you can do when the enemy team has super high base damage, a Quelling Blade plus some decent base damage, or the enemy has a spell that they're using to get last hits efficiently. A good player will typically never sacrifice last hits in order to harass you. Even in relatively even matchups, this is something that can be abused to win the lane. For instance, if you set the wave up such that you stagger the creep deaths between you and your opponent's creeps, such as by using a spell or a few right clicks on the creeps to get their HP a little bit lower as they're dying, then you can get all of your last hits and then harass your opponent when they go to last hit soon after. This tactic is especially strong in cases where you outrange your opponent and it's easy to last hit but hard for you to deny. Lina is a great example of this. She last hits with her spell and outranges almost any opponent, but her denying isn't that great because her base damage isn't incredibly high like something like a Tiny. So she can get free damage on the enemies while they're last hitting instead, and she won't take damage while she's last hitting because she has that range to use. Trick number 2. Conversely, if the enemy has great harass, then it can be very game losing to just sit there and try and last hit. So go for last hits when they're focusing on last hitting instead. This is when you want to focus on not staggering the creep deaths. In other words, try to hit the creeps such that your opponent will be trying to last hit a creep as you're trying to last hit. And between last hits, you can abuse tree lines, high ground, and distance to not take any damage, and of course you can try to stay out of vision as well by abusing all of those things. You can play on the opposite side of the lane of your opponent. They move left, you go right, they move right, you go left, and then you can right-click your opponent to drag creeps closer to your tower. It's much harder for any opponent to play aggressively on you when you're near your tower, and that goes for in any lane. Trick number 3, and this is possibly the most important one just given what I've seen in pubs. If the enemy laner is much stronger than you, then you can still go even in the lane, even if they're a much better hero or a counter pick to you. You push the wave using whatever you can and then proceed to jungle, pick up bounties, pick up power runes, or go to gank. A lot of the time it will cost you some regen to push the wave, but the jungle, bounties, power rune, or gank will certainly pay for the regen and more. And because the creep equilibrium will bounce off the enemy tower after you push it, you'll be back to the lane before any of your creeps even die, so you won't lose a thing in terms of experience and last hits. Unless your team has an absolutely abysmal draft, if you simply go even in a lane that you're supposed to lose, you'll win the game. This is because based on draft order in Dota alone, chances are one of your lanes will be destined to win, one of your lanes will be destined to tie, and one of your lanes will be destined to lose. So, if you're in the lane that's supposed to lose and you win it anyway because you're high skill, you're usually going to crush the game, so just going even is sometimes a very winning strategy if you're supposed to be the hero that's not going even. You can extend this concept even further and cut the creep wave to win an otherwise unwinnable lane. This strategy is great against hard counter picks, but it's easier to do in the off lane and kind of easy to do in the middle lane and then kind of hard to do in the safe lane. But if you're a mid laner like Broodmother or a safe laner like Juggernaut who can spin the creep wave, there are of course cases where you can do it in the harder lanes. With the off lane, you can do it on basically any hero because all you need to do, go behind the tower, cut the wave. If you can't kill the wave, just drag it to a creep camp. Simple as that. Trick number 4. If you're feeling way stronger in the lane, either due to your pick or due to your play, then here's how you push the lane into a 1 state. You need to put your body between the creep wave and your opponent, looking to almost exclusively intimidate if you can. But you need to be very careful in right-clicking your opponent because if you right-click them, it'll push the creep wave, but then conversely, if you're not doing anything to punish them when they come up to try to last hit, then they have no reason to be intimidated by you. So it's kind of a balance of right-clicking them, not pushing the wave as much as you can, but also making them afraid of you, and using spells in this scenario is honestly ideal. Your ideal state is to get every single last hit and every single deny until the point where they just go jungle. If you are standing right on the creeps and they aren't, then of course you will get every single last hit and deny because their projectile has to travel to hit the creeps and yours doesn't. If they're melee, they have a similar problem because they have to run to the wave. If you're in this state and you're winning the lane, do not chase the enemy team for kills unless they put themselves totally out of position because it will ruin the 1 state that you've got the game in. The reason for this is basically because kills are not worth the amount that denies are. If you sit there for 2 to 3 minutes and deny your opponent versus sitting there for 2 to 3 minutes and killing your opponent, you'll get way more from denying. To extend this even further, but more dangerously, you can put your body behind the enemy tower, cutting their creep wave and preventing them from being in experience range altogether. This is essentially the best way to win a lane, but it's very, very dangerous because then you're behind the enemy tower, they can TP in front of you, and behind you, you're going to get clothesline. But if you think that that's worth it, and it's worth feeding for to get a couple of minutes of your opponent not getting any experience, then you can trade a death for that. Or if you think that it's worth it to drag the enemy heroes from the other lanes to your lane, then that's also worth it. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you, ladies and gentlemen, in another video.